Welcome! In this series of short videos, we will look at topics for the PowerBasic Console compiler. Today we will look at creating a generic utility for backing up SQL Server Databases. When you're working with SQL Server Databases, there's a great need to back up your database on a regular basis. Failing to back up your database could leave you in a situation where you lose the database altogether, either because the database has become corrupted due to a disk problem, or the server or computer on which the database is running fails to respond. We're going to be looking at Microsoft SQL Server Express. Now you can back up the database using the Management Studio client. However, this involves you manually going into the client, clicking on your database, and then selecting a backup. What we're going to look at today is the creation of a small generic application that can be used to back up any SQL Server database. So let's have a look at the code. We're going to be using the PowerBasic Console compiler today, as this application will be running in the background without any user intervention. The first thing to look at is the command we're actually going to be executing to perform the SQL backup. SQL Server comes with a command line utility called SQLcmd. This is a command we're going to be using to actually do the backup. SQLcmd comes with a number of parameters. First of all, the name of the computer and the instance name of SQL Server, the operation you wish to perform, in this case back up the database, the name of the database you wish to back up, the location, folder and the name of the backup you wish to create, and finally the with format command. The with format command will ensure that when you back up your database, in this case this is a full backup of the database, it will overwrite any file of the same name. If you omit the with format command, it will append to the same file name if it already exists, and you will build up a media set of a series of backups. There are many backup strategies you can use with SQL Server, including incremental backups, but what we'll be looking at here today is a full and complete backup of your database. So this SQLcmd and its parameters is what we're going to be using today. We're going to be using three libraries here today. We're going to be using a command line library, which we will use to take in parameters on the command line. We're going to be using the file handling routines library, as this is a dependency of one of our other libraries, and finally we'll be using the PB shell library to allow us to shell out to the command line. So we will first declare each of these libraries as an include file at the beginning of our application. What I want to do with these backups is I want to create a backup for each calendar day, and I want the name of the day as part of the name of the backup file. That way I will keep a rolling set of 7 days backup for a specific database. Each file beginning with the name of the day. For example, the backup done on a Monday will be called Monday, then an underline, and then the name of the database. We can determine the name of the day using the PowerTime class. So we'll declare a variable called iToday, which is going to contain the current date and time. And from that we will pull out the name of the day of the week. So we will create a string variable to contain that name. We are also going to be taking in parameters on the command line, so we will create a variable called command to store that information. And we will create a third variable, also a string variable called batch. This will contain the string we're going to send to the command line to launch our SQL command. And I'm going to set up 4 more variables, one for the name of the database to back up, one for the path to the backup folder, a third for the name of the backup file, and a final variable to hold the name and instance name of the SQL Server itself. So the first thing to do is to pick up any parameters that have come in on the command line. PowerBasic makes this very easy to do. You merely have to populate your variable with command $. Now we can use the PowerTime class to pick up the day of the week. we merely have to populate iToday with .now. That will pick up the current date and time. Then we can use the iToday.dayOfWeek string to pull back the name of the current day, between Monday to Sunday. Now we could hardcode the value of all the key variables: the database name, the backup folder into which we want to place our backup, the backup name, which is the backup folder plus the day of the week, plus the database name, plus .back on the end. And the final variable being the name of the SQL Server and its instance. In this case, the SQL Server database is being held on this computer, disk 001, and the instance name is SQL Express 01. However, while we could hardcode all these values inside our program, it would mean the application could only back up a single database. However, what I want to do is to pass in these three key pieces of information on the command line. That way our application becomes generic and can be called to back up any database to any location. So we're going to use one of the routines in our command line include library. We can use this to define each of our variables. We can give the parameter a name, for example in this case DB, to be the name of the database. The name of the database is delimited by a double quote. The folder name will contain that part of the string, and the SQL Server name will contain the name of the SQL Server and its instance. Each of these name parameters is preceded with a slash and ended with a hash sign. We'll come back to these parameters when we're actually calling the application. So how do we pick them up from the command line? In our command line include file, you will find there is a single function called return named parameter expanded. This takes two parameters: the name of the parameter you're looking for and the full value of what come in on the command line. So for example, to pick up the database name, we merely have to specify the name of our parameter, followed by the command line details which we took in using command $. Using this mechanism, it doesn't matter the order that the parameters come in on the command line. It will search them out quite happily. So we do exactly the same for the backup folder, and our backup name is formed of three parts. It starts with the backup folder, followed by the day of the week, followed by an underline, followed by the database name, and at the end we tack on the extension, in this case .back. And the final parameter is the name and instance name of the SQL Server. So with these four key variables actually populated, we can now make the call to SQLcmd. But just to ensure that these parameters have been picked up correctly, we'll send them out to the console. This way we can be sure when we're testing this that the parameters have indeed been picked up correctly. Next we have to form up our batch string. This is what we're going to be executing on the command line. This starts with SQLcmd, which is the program we're going to be launching. The options come next, and then the name of the SQL Server, which we've picked up on our parameters. Then the -q, the double quote followed by the words backup database. And then we have our database name, followed by the words to disk, then the equals sign. After that we have the full qualified path and name of the file we wish to back up to, and ending up with format, and a double quote on the end. So to actually launch our batch command, we're going to use a function in the shell library. This is called SQLcmd. The SQLcmd function in our shell library takes two parameters. The second parameter is optional and we won't be using it today. The first parameter, expected by the SQLcmd function, is an ASCII-Z parameter. Our command is held in a batch variable, which is a string. So we can get around that by simply adding a 0-len string to the end of the batch. That way it's been passed by value. So our code will remain within the SQLcmd function until the batch is actually finished. And once completed, we will send a message to the console to say we're exiting in 2 seconds, and then our application will complete. So let's just try a compilation on that to make sure we haven't missed anything. And it compiles quite cleanly. So let's now switch over to our computer which contains the SQL Server database. So here we are now connected to our disk 001 machine, the computer which contains the SQL Server database. And we have copied our CC backup DB onto this machine. If we ran the application now, it would do nothing because we need to specify the parameters. So I'm going to be using a third-party tool called System Scheduler Professional. I've done a video on this one previously. If we open the task I've set up for this, we will see we are running our CC backup db.exe application. And we're giving it a series of parameters. The DB parameter, specifying the database to backup, in this case the A YouTube projects, the folder to which we wish to backup, in this case the E backups SQL Server backups, and the final parameter is the name of the SQL Server and its instance name, in this case disk 001 SQL Express 01. And currently I have this scheduled to run at 1 AM. However, we can run it quite happily by right-clicking and clicking on Run Now. Once this is run, it should overwrite this Tuesday backup I ran earlier. So if we click Run Now, the backup runs, and the date and time have now been updated on the backup. We now have a date modified time of 1311, which is our current date and time. So in summary, what we've achieved today is we have created a generic SQL Server backup application in the PowerBasic Console compiler. This will accept on the command line 3 key parameters: the name of the database to backup, the location to which you wish to backup, and the name of the SQL Server the database exists on. So this can be used to back up a series of SQL Server databases by duplicating these parameters in another schedule. However, as always with backups, you should copy your backup off the machine which has the SQL Server database so that it can be still accessed should something drastic happen to the SQL Server box itself. Hopefully you'll find this code useful in your applications, but that's it for today. Thank you for watching.